The restaurant was the kind of place where silence had weight. Not the awkward kind, but the expensive kind. Soft piano music drifted through the air, polished marble floors reflected warm golden lights, and the smell of truffle oil and wine clung delicately to every corner. It was the kind of place where people lowered their voices instinctively, where laughter was controlled and measured, where money did not shout because it had no need to. Vanessa Hart believed she belonged there. She walked in like she owned the air itself, her heels clicking with confidence, her manicured fingers looped tightly around the arm of her fiancé. She liked walking beside him. It made people stare longer, made women look twice, made men wonder. He was tall, composed, effortlessly handsome in a way that didn't try too hard. No loud jewelry, no designer logos screaming for attention, just quiet presence, authority without effort. Adrian Cole. That was his name, though very few people in that room truly understood what it meant. Vanessa leaned closer to him as they were guided to their reserved table near the window, the city lights glowing like scattered stars beyond the glass. "They're staring," she murmured, lips curling in satisfaction. "I told you. People can always tell when a woman has won." Adrian didn't respond immediately. He simply pulled her chair out and waited for her to sit before taking his own seat. His movements were calm, precise, almost distant. "If that's what you call it," he said quietly. Vanessa laughed, brushing it off. She always did. Adrian had a habit of saying things like that, things that didn't quite land the way she expected. But she had learned to ignore them. Men like him didn't leave. Men like him settled down with women like her. She was beautiful, connected, ambitious. She knew how to play the role. A young waitress approached their table, her posture straight, but her eyes tired in a way that came from long shifts and not enough rest. Her name tag read Lena. She couldn't have been more than 22. Her uniform was neat, but worn at the edges, the kind of subtle detail Vanessa noticed instantly and judged silently. "Good evening," Lena said gently. "Welcome. May I start you off with something to drink?" Vanessa didn't look up from her phone. "Champagne. The best one you have. And don't take forever." Lena nodded quickly. "Of course." She turned slightly toward Adrian. "And for you, sir?" "Still water, please," he replied, offering a polite nod. As Lena placed the menus on the table, her elbow brushed against Adrian's sleeve. It was brief, barely noticeable. A moment so insignificant it would have passed without thought in any other setting. But Vanessa saw it. Her head snapped up instantly, eyes sharp, jaw tightening. "Did you just touch him?" she demanded. Lena froze. I'm sorry. It was an accident." Vanessa stood so abruptly her chair scraped loudly against the floor, the sound slicing through the quiet atmosphere. "Accident," she scoffed. "Do you think I'm stupid? You girls always pretend it's an accident." The room seemed to shrink. Conversations around them faltered. Nearby diners glanced over, curiosity turning into discomfort. "I swear, I didn't mean to," Lena said, her voice shaking now. "I was just—" Before she could finish, Vanessa's hand moved. The slap echoed. Sharp. Loud. Final. Lena staggered back, one hand flying to her cheek, eyes wide with shock as tears welled instantly. A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. Someone dropped a fork. Another diner whispered something under their breath. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Then Lena spoke again, her voice barely holding together. "I'm so sorry. Please." Vanessa laughed, a cruel sound that cut deeper than the slap itself. "Sorry? You think sorry fixes this? You touched my fiancé. You should be grateful I didn't do worse." A manager hurried over, face pale. "Miss, please, we can't allow." "Then fire her," Vanessa snapped. "I don't want filthy hands serving me." Lena's tears spilled freely now, humiliation washing over her in waves. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Adrian stood. The movement was subtle, but it commanded attention. The kind of attention that didn't need force. "Vanessa," he said calmly. She turned toward him, incredulous. "What?" "That's enough." She stared at him as if she hadn't heard correctly. "Enough? Did you not just see what she did?" "I saw exactly what happened," he replied. Vanessa's voice rose. "Then why are you standing there like this is normal?" Adrian looked past her, his gaze settling briefly on Lena. "Are you hurt?" Lena shook her head quickly, though her cheek was already red. "No, sir." Vanessa laughed again, this time louder. "Oh, now you care? Don't tell me you're falling for the poor waitress act." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. "Sit down," he said quietly. Vanessa stiffened. "Excuse me?" I said sit down. The authority in his tone silenced her. Not completely, but enough to make her hesitate. Slowly, she lowered herself back into the chair, eyes burning. You're embarrassing me, she hissed. We'll talk about this later. There is no later, Adrian said. Her breath caught. What? He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table between them. He opened it gently. The ring glimmered under the restaurant lights. Vanessa's mouth parted. What are you doing? I was going to propose again tonight, he said evenly. Publicly. Properly. Her eyes lit up for half a second. Then why? But after watching you, he continued, I realized something. The light drained from her face. I don't know you, he said. And I don't want to. The silence was deafening. You're joking, she whispered. I'm not. She reached for his arm. Adrian, stop this. You're upset. I was just protecting what's mine. He gently removed her hand. People are not property. Her voice broke. You love me. I loved who you pretended to be. Whispers spread like wildfire. Phones appeared discreetly. The manager stood frozen, unsure what to do. Adrian turned to him calmly. Please ensure she receives medical attention, he said, nodding toward Lena. And she's paid for the rest of the week. The manager nodded rapidly. Vanessa shot to her feet again. You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am? Yes, Adrian said. That's the problem. He raised his voice just enough. My name is Adrian Cole, he said. I own Cole Global Holdings. The reaction was immediate, audible, unmistakable. Vanessa staggered back as if struck. Cole Global wasn't just wealthy. It was a name that moved markets, that bought companies with a signature. Adrian looked at her one last time. And I don't marry people who think kindness is optional. Security approached quietly. Vanessa's screams followed her out, shattering her perfect image with every step. Lena stood trembling, unsure whether to cry or disappear. Adrian turned to her. I'm sorry, he said softly. You didn't deserve that. She nodded, wiping her face. Thank you. As he walked out of the restaurant alone, the city lights reflected in the glass behind him. Something inside him felt lighter. Not healed, but free. And Vanessa Hart had just learned that cruelty has consequences. Adrian stepped out into the night air, the city humming around him, horns blaring in the distance, neon lights reflecting off wet pavement. The cold hit his face, sharp and grounding. For a moment, he just stood there, hands in his pockets, breathing like someone who had been holding their breath for far too long and only just realized it. Behind him, through the glass doors of the restaurant, he could still see movement. Staff whispering, guests leaning close to one another, retelling what they had just witnessed with widened eyes. He knew by morning the video would be everywhere. A billionaire dumping his fiancée in public. A slap. A waitress. A scandal perfectly designed for the internet. He didn't care. What unsettled him wasn't Vanessa's humiliation or the spectacle. It was how easily she had raised her hand, how natural cruelty had looked on her face, how familiar it had felt, as if it had been waiting just beneath the surface for permission. His phone vibrated almost immediately. Vanessa. He silenced it without looking. Another vibration. Then another. Messages piling up, each more frantic than the last. He imagined the words without reading them. You're ruining my life. This isn't fair. You owe me. You embarrassed me. You can't do this to me. He could hear her voice clearly in his head, sharp and wounded and furious all at once. Adrian hailed a car and slid into the back seat. As the vehicle pulled away from the curb, he finally allowed himself to lean back and close his eyes. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, recognition flickering briefly before professionalism settled in. Rough night, the driver asked carefully. Adrian let out a quiet breath. Something like that. The car merged into traffic, carrying him away from the restaurant, away from the life he had almost locked himself into. His phone buzzed again, this time with a different name. Marcus. He answered. It's over, Adrian said before his friend could speak. There was a pause. I saw the video, Marcus replied. You okay? Yes, Adrian said, surprising himself with how true it felt. I think I finally am. They spoke briefly. Logistics. Canceling events. Handling the press. Marcus promised to deal with everything. He always did. Adrian ended the call and stared out the window as the city blurred by. He thought of Lena, her face when the slap landed, the way she had tried to make herself smaller, as if disappearing could somehow undo what had been done to her. He felt a familiar anger twist in his chest, but this time it was different. It wasn't the explosive kind. It was steady, purposeful. By the time the car stopped in front of his building, he had already made a decision. The next morning, Lena woke up with a headache and swollen eyes. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the sound again. Felt the heat on her cheek. Saw the faces staring at her like she was something shameful and fascinating all at once. Her phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand. Messages from coworkers, some sympathetic, some nosy. Links she didn't want to open. She already knew. She dragged herself out of bed and went to the bathroom, staring at her reflection. The faint outline of fingers was still visible on her cheek. She touched it lightly, then dropped her hand. Her mother knocked softly on the door. "Lena, I'm up," she said, her voice hoarse. Her mother stepped inside, worry etched deeply into her face. "I saw the video," she said quietly. Lena nodded. "I'm sorry." Her mother's eyes widened. "Sorry? For what?" "For causing trouble," Lena whispered. "For embarrassing the restaurant." Her mother crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled her into a tight hug. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You did nothing wrong." "Nothing." Lena clung to her, tears spilling freely now. "Everyone saw." "Yes," her mother said. "And they also saw the truth." Later that afternoon, Lena's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, assuming it was another reporter. But something made her answer. "Hello, Lena," a calm male voice said. "It's Adrian." Her breath caught. "Sir, I wanted to check on you," he said. "Are you okay?" She hesitated, then nodded even though he couldn't see her. "I will be." "I'm glad," he said. "I also wanted to let you know that the restaurant manager should have already spoken to you." "He did," Lena said. "They gave me the rest of the week off." "Paid." "That's good," Adrian replied. "There's something else. I'd like to meet with you, if you're comfortable. Strictly to talk." Her fingers tightened around the phone. "About what?" "About your future," he said. "And some options." She swallowed. "Okay." They agreed on a time and place. Neutral. Public. A quiet cafe not far from her campus. When Lena arrived, she almost didn't recognize him at first. No suit this time. No polished shoes. Just dark jeans, a sweater, and the same composed presence that made the air around him feel steady. He stood when he saw her. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for asking," she replied. They sat across from each other, sunlight filtering in through the windows. For a moment, neither spoke. "I want to be clear," Adrian began. "I didn't come here out of guilt." Lena nodded. "I didn't think you did." "I came because what happened to you wasn't an isolated incident," he said. "And because I have the means to change something about that." She listened carefully as he spoke about a foundation he had quietly funded for years. About scholarships. About worker protection. About dignity. He spoke without drama, without the need to impress. "You don't owe me anything," he finished. "But if you want, I'd like to help you finish school without worrying about money." Lena's eyes filled again, but this time the tears felt different. "Why me?" "Because you were brave," he said simply. "And because you shouldn't have to suffer for someone else's ugliness." She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. "Thank you." Outside, unseen by either of them, cameras waited. Stories were already forming. Narratives twisting and stretching, eager for another scandal. But inside that cafe, something quieter was happening. Something real. Vanessa sat in her apartment, curtains drawn, phone discarded on the couch beside her. Her name trended everywhere. Not the way she had imagined it would. Friends stopped answering. Brands pulled away. Invitations vanished overnight. She replayed the video again and again, flinching each time she saw her own face twisted with rage. "That's not me," she whispered, even as she knew it was. Her phone buzzed with a final message from Adrian. Short. Final. "Please don't contact me again." She screamed, the sound tearing out of her chest, echoing through the empty space she had mistaken for a life. And somewhere across the city, Lena walked home lighter than she had in months, unaware that her life had already begun to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The story wasn't over. Not even close. Lena didn't tell anyone about the meeting at the cafe. Not her co-workers, not her classmates, not even her mother. Some things felt too fragile to speak aloud, like saying them might break the spell. Life continued, outwardly unchanged. She returned to work the following week, shoulders stiff at first, every sound too loud, every customer's glance feeling heavier than it should have. But the manager treated her differently now. Kinder. Careful. almost apologetic. Word had traveled, and not just among the staff. Customers recognized her. Some smiled warmly. Some whispered. One woman squeezed her hand and said, "You didn't deserve that." Lena locked herself in the restroom afterward and cried, overwhelmed by the kindness as much as the memory of the cruelty. 2 weeks later, an email arrived confirming what Adrian had promised. Her tuition for the next 2 years was covered. Not a loan. Not something to be repaid. Just handled. She stared at the screen for a long time, rereading the words until they felt real. The weight she had carried in her chest for so long shifted, loosened. She called her mother, voice shaking, and they cried together on the phone. Adrian stayed out of the public eye for a while. He needed the quiet. The press circled relentlessly at first, eager for a follow-up scandal, a reconciliation, a revenge arc. None came. He refused interviews, declined statements, let his team handle the noise while he focused on restructuring parts of his foundation, expanding programs that protected service workers, creating clear reporting systems that didn't punish people for speaking up. He thought of Vanessa only in passing. She tried everything at first. Emails from new addresses, messages sent through mutual friends, public apologies carefully worded for sympathy, private messages dripping with anger when sympathy didn't work. Adrian ignored them all. He didn't feel hatred toward her, just a quiet, immovable certainty that whatever had existed between them had ended the moment her hand connected with Lena's face. Vanessa's world continued to shrink. The invitations never returned. The calls dried up. The friends she had laughed with, gossiped with, competed with, all found polite excuses to stay busy. She watched her reflection change in the mirror, tension carving lines she hadn't noticed before. She told herself it was temporary, that something better would come. It had to. She had always landed on her feet. But the world had a way of humbling people who believed they were immune. Months passed. Lena's life expanded in quiet, meaningful ways. She focused on her studies, no longer exhausted from juggling endless shifts. She volunteered at a community center on weekends, helping other students navigate work and school, sharing resources she never knew existed before. Confidence grew where fear had once lived. Slowly, carefully, Adrian attended one of the foundation's events late that fall, standing at the back of the room as Lena spoke briefly about her experience. She didn't dramatize it, didn't name names. She spoke about dignity, about how one moment could shatter someone or remind them of their worth, depending on who chose to act. Their eyes met across the room, and for a second the noise faded. Afterward, they spoke like old acquaintances, not saviors and victims. They talked about books, about food, about the strange comfort of routines. The conversation flowed easily, unforced. They didn't rush anything. Weeks turned into months. Coffee became dinner. Dinners became long walks through the city, conversations stretching late into the night. They learned each other slowly, honestly, without illusion. Adrian didn't hide his past. Lena didn't pretend she hadn't been hurt. They let the truth sit between them, unadorned. What surprised Adrian most was how normal it felt. With all his wealth, his influence, his carefully controlled world, he had grown used to relationships that felt like negotiations. Lena brought none of that. She challenged him without fear, laughed without calculation, called him out when he tried to retreat behind composure. What surprised Lena was how safe she felt. Not protected in the way money protects, but seen, respected, chosen without conditions. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the river, Lena turned to him and said softly, "You know, if you hadn't stood up that night, I don't think I would have survived it the same way." Adrian looked at her. "You would have," he said. "You're stronger than you realize." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to find out alone." He reached for her hand, not as a promise, not as a claim, but as a quiet acknowledgement of the path they had both walked to get there. Across the city, Vanessa scrolled endlessly through old photos, old headlines, old versions of herself. She told herself stories about being misunderstood, about being wronged, about how unfair it all was. But late at night, when the noise of her own excuses faded, another truth crept in. One she tried desperately to silence. No one had taken anything from her. She had given it away. The realization burned. Not enough to change her overnight, but enough to haunt her. On a crisp spring morning, Lena graduated. Her mother cried in the front row, pride shining brighter than any spotlight. Adrian watched from a distance, not wanting to overshadow the moment, his chest tight with something that felt like hope. When Lena spotted him afterward, she ran into his arms, laughter and tears mixing freely. "I did it," she said. "You always were going to," he replied. The future didn't unfold like a fairy tale. There were disagreements, long days, hard conversations, but there was also respect, growth, and the quiet understanding that love didn't need to be loud to be powerful. The video of the slap eventually faded from public memory, replaced by newer scandals, louder outrage. But for those who had lived it, its impact remained. For Lena, it became the moment her life turned toward possibility. For Adrian, it became the moment he chose integrity over comfort. And for Vanessa, it became the moment she learned far too late that power without kindness is just another form of emptiness. The night she raised her hand had changed everything. Not because of the slap, but because of what followed.